With all the guides that I've made thus far for Tactics Ogre Reborn, one of the ones I haven't yet covered that I've gotten a lot of requests for is a guide to recruit Ravness Loxaerion, Dame Knight Extraordinaire. Now, I've finally been making my way through the law route where Ravness can be found, which means it's time. Let's talk recruiting Ravness, and also some other guy. Hello everyone, my name is Tom, otherwise known as Titanium Legman. If you've been around here for a while, you know I'm doing my best to grow the channel as my full-time job. And if you haven't yet, I hope you'll consider subscribing. You'll be helping me reach my goals, and you'll be supporting my partner Jane as well. Thank you. Ravness Loxaerion is a newer member of the cast who was added in the PSP release of Tactics Ogre Let Us Cling Together. A Knight of the Wallister, Ravness is introduced early in Chapter 1 and is a staunch ally who pushes Denim & Co. forward from the get-go, while bestowing some words of caution and wisdom simultaneously. Modeled on Agrius Oaks of Final Fantasy Tactics fame, Ravness quickly earned a following that has endured to this day. Not only is she a beloved character from a design and story standpoint, she is also one of the better units in the game, so all around, she's great to have. As a consequence of acquiring Ravness, we also wind up getting a man known as Jeunan, who's a powerful warrior in his own right. So, as always, let's go over how to get these two, then we'll do some build chat. Similarly to fellow newcomer Cressida, Ravness's recruitment can be quite the head-scratcher. While we aren't messing with any chaos frame here, we do have hidden fights, escort quests, important dialogue choices, and even a whole dialogue chain that needs to be played out in full during a battle. All of which we need to handle to acquire Ravness. And while you meet Ravness in Chapter 1, it won't be until Chapter 3 of the law route that we're finally able to get her. So let's go through the steps, because it's a little bit of a lengthy one. First of all, you of course do need to choose to go on the lawful route to acquire Ravness, you absolute monster. We all know that people who choose the lawful route are irredeemable lunatics who only wish to see chaos and uncertainty unfold in the world, right? Right? No? Okay. I know a lot of people actually really like the law route, and I'm just kidding with you. I just like chaos more. But after you make this choice, you can't let Ravness die, and, as she will also be fighting you, you can't kill her yourself in the ensuing battle. You do need to clear the rest of the enemies and let the cutscenes play out, but you need to ensure that Ravness survives. And unfortunately for you, she starts closer to you than she does the rest of the enemies, so she will be throwing herself at you with reckless abandon. Pretty much the best way to go about this, seeing as how you are so early on in Chapter 1, is to try and give her a tanky unit or two to chew on who don't have counterattack equipped. Think maybe like a knight with a one-handed sword and a shield, so they'll be able to parry and block, but they won't be counterattacking, and they'll be able to take a healthy amount of hits. Be prepared to potentially give her some items, or have your clerics cast some healing on her if she winds up coming under fire by the enemy, or winds up taking some accidental hits from your units as well. Regardless of how you go about doing it, make sure Ravness survives this battle. It is the only way that you're going to be able to recruit her. After the battle has played out, you can move on to Chapter 2. In Chapter 2, you'll clear battles until you beat the encounter at the Rehoboam Aqueduct. This will then unlock a talk entry, of course, in the Warren Report, of course, titled Ravness Loxaerion Captured. Read this report, and a new encounter at the Racing Way will appear. Proceeding to the battle, you will again need to keep Ravness alive. When prompted, you will have the option to say, "I cannot leave you here," and this will allow you to enter the battle with Ravness as an AI-controlled ally. This fight isn't particularly difficult. I would say it's certainly easier than the previous one, where you're keeping Ravness from being killed by your units or the enemy units. You basically just need to catch up to her, and then toss healing at her as necessary. She does good damage. She's all around a very solid warrior. You've seen that in Chapter 1, so she can largely take care of herself. Just be ready to patch her up if needed. After clearing this battle at the Racing Way, you're safe to proceed through the game to Chapter 3, so go ahead and do so. Once you reach Chapter 3, you'll proceed until you complete the battles at Brigantis Castle. Afterwards, some cutscenes will play, and when prompted, you will have a very important dialogue choice. If you mess this up, you will not be able to recruit Ravness. Answer, how could they be? This simple answer will ensure not only that you're able to recruit Ravness, but, consequently, it will ensure that you recruit Jeunan the Worm Knight. This is important because not only is Jeunan a powerful and interesting character in his own right, he's actually the key to recruiting Ravness as well. We'll talk about Jeunan and Ravness as combat units once we've recruited Ravness and got them both under our wings. After the scenes at Brigantis, it's very important that you immediately check the Warren report for a new talk entry titled Lord of Caritani Missing. You must read this prior to moving on, as it will trigger a new conversation in the ensuing battle at the Bahana Highlands. In the battle on the Highlands, you must bring Jeunan with you into the fight. You'll want to slowly whittle the boss Rubbervel's HP down to about half to start a conversation between him, Jeunan, and Denim. This will take place over multiple turns, so be patient and don't kill the boss until the whole thing has played out. You'll know this has been the case when Jeunan says, "I am sure by now that his father joins him," followed by Denim saying, "Balbatos must fall or they died for nothing," once the battle concludes. So long as those dialogue bits play out, then you know that you're good to proceed. Move on to Caritani, and you'll have some more battles ahead of you. Clear them, letting the associated events play out. Again, we won't go through any of the actual cutscenes to avoid spoilers, but once they do, your final task is to return to the Bahana Highlands once again to encounter Ravness beset once again on all sides. Fight alongside her, keeping her alive one last time, and finally, at the end of the battle, she'll request to join. Man, Matsuda really didn't hold back when designing the recruitment quests for these new characters, did he? Regardless, congrats. You've now added not one, but 2 powerful units to your roster, and if you treat them right, they'll help carry you through the rest of the game. Now let's go ahead and talk a couple of builds, not just for Ravness, but for Jeunan as well, and figure out how they're best going to be slotted into your army. Jeunan first, let's go. Jeunan is the only unique Dragoon in the game, something I'm sure you've noticed thanks to his blood red armor, which looks edgy as hell, gotta love that. Jeunan is quite fast, faster in fact than most other units you'll have at this point in the Law route, including Denim and Canopus. Good physical stats on top of this mean that Jeunan should quickly find a home somewhere on your team. This is doubly true if you don't have a dedicated Dragoon already, as Jeunan excels in the role, perhaps unsurprisingly, for someone known as the Worm Knight. If you want to keep Jeunan in his monster control role, your first instinct might be to slap a big honkin' sword or axe on him and throw him into the fray. But allow me to suggest something a little more nuanced, a little bit more avant-garde, if you will. Let's talk about Crossbow Jeunan. You see, the various Slayer and Bane skills work just as well with ranged weapons as they do with melee ones, and by and large, crossbows are lighter than and have less RT cost on use than big two-handed weapons that Dragoons are known for. So, with Eunan's good RT, he can actually do more slaying from range than he may do up close and personal because of the extra turns that he'll wind up getting. Here's my setup. Note that I am doing Law as a secondary route. I did Chaos first, so I have some high-level equipment that you won't have access to if you're doing the Law route as your first run. That's fine. It's not a huge deal. You can just kind of scale whatever your equipment is to match what you have that is available to you. Like, you're not going to have this big fancy relic crossbow. That's fine. Just put whatever the best crossbow you currently have on Jeunan, and you'll be fine. It'll work out just as well. So, we're starting off, of course, with a two-handed crossbow. I have the Shams, a fire crossbow, to match with the fire element that Jeunan has. And I mean, it's just good, man. Like, it's just a good crossbow. Look at this thing again. It's a relic, so I've got it upgraded. It inflicts fire inverse. It has counterattack 3. So if he gets attacked from range, he's just going to be able to counter, which is awesome. It's got very good stats. It's got good damage all around. Very, very nice. But again, I mean, if you've got an Arbalest or even a Balder crossbow, a steel bow, whatever it is that you've got on hand, you can throw on Jeunan and he'll get the job done regardless. Seeing as how this is a ranged combat build, Jeunan shouldn't really be in the fray when he's not wielding a melee weapon. My focus is more on armor that's going to give damage and less on armor that is going to give defenses. And actually, that means I need to switch these Balder leggings. So, we of course have a Balder helm +1, a Brigandine +1, gauntlets +1, and linen slops +1. This is a more offense-oriented setup. And then I also have the Archer's Earring that's going to give bonuses for crossbows. Now, again, if you're doing Law for the first time and you've just recruited Jeunan and you're still in Chapter 3, you've never seen anything else of the game, a lot of this won't be accessible to you. Again, that's fine. Maybe instead of an archer's earring, you have a ring of the horde, or even just like a vitality ring or a ring of deftness, something that'll still increase damage, but that isn't necessarily as powerful as the weapon-specific earrings. Maybe instead of gauntlets +1, you just have Balder gauntlets +1, or even leather gloves. Like, that's fine. Adjust based on what you have. The goal is to just have gear that's going to increase Jeunan's damage as much as possible. What's nice is that you can see between having the crossbow, which is lighter than like a two-handed weapon, and having some lighter armor that boosts attack, Jeunan actually has 96 RT. We're under that magical 100 that I try to keep most of my damage-dealing classes under, so they're getting more turns, can move more frequently, and in turn do more damage. Speaking of being able to do more damage and, generally be capable, we do have an item spread that's tailored towards that. We have a very light healing item that's not going to cost much RT at all. You could do basic mend leaves all the way up to mending seeds. They're all pretty light on the RT cost. A fruit of the adept is going to give a little bit of healing, a little bit of MP. You could use it on yourself if you want to get some finishers. Use it on an ally who's maybe a little beat up, no big deal. The array and plume is the most notable aspect of this item spread because it's going to give you strengthen, allowing you to deal more damage from range. Classic stuff here. And then, of course, a blessing stone. There's pretty much no reason not to have a blessing stone on every character unless you have a very specific item setup for a specific build, because you want to be able to just res with anyone if it winds up coming down to it. We have no spells because, of course, Dragoons are not spellcasters, and then our skill loadout is going to be rather simple, all things considered. First of all, we have crossbows, of course. I just got Jeunan. I've not used him that much, so his crossbow skill is not leveled up enough to have any finishing moves, but eventually we'll get there. Brimstone Hail especially will be good, as it is a fire finisher. We've got a fire crossbow. Jeunan is a fire element. It's all going to be good. We then, of course, have some Slayer skills. I have Dragon Slayer and Beast Slayer on currently, so that no matter what monsters we're facing, Jeunan can deal with it. And we actually want to take this pincer attack off. I believe he comes with this naturally, and I hadn't yet changed it. You don't want pincer attack here. You're not going to be in melee range. You literally can't use it. Instead, I would opt for something like a Bane skill. And you could probably swap this depending on what type of monster you're going to be facing the most. Do a little bit of scouting. If there's a bunch of dragons on the field, put Dragon's Bane on. If there's a bunch of monsters on the field, put Beast Bane on. You really only need one. Just swap it around as you need it. And what's nice is you'll be in the back line, you'll be behind your melee fighters, but you should still be in range to give them this buff, even if you're not in the fight yourself. Pretty good stuff. All around, this is a very nice Jeunan build. It's going to do a lot of work for you, and it's basically going to guarantee that monsters and dragons are never a problem for you. Now let's do a little bit of a theory craft here, though. What if instead of going with Dragoon, maybe you already have a dedicated Dragoon, you wanted to have a Terror Knight in your Law Route run? Well, allow me to propose Jeunan as your choice for that role. And why would I choose that? Well, the answer lies in RT. So we can see here with a full loadout, Jeunan currently has an RT of 109. And again, remember, I have endgame gear. Endgame gear is going to be heavier than not endgame gear. So you're actually probably going to see a lighter RT if you're doing this, again, on your first run through the game. You're on Law, maybe instead of a fancy relic Moonblade, you have a Claymore. Well, that's going to drop your RT by a few points, but the point still stands. If you compare Jeunan to, say, Nameless here, my generic Terror Knight, who has a similarly heavy weapon equipped, then you're going to see Jeunan has lower RT, because Jeunan is a unique. He has lower RT. So if you're going through Law for the first time, and Jeunan is one of your fastest characters, giving him a class that is historically quite slow due to its heavy equipment and low class RT will make it a lot easier for him to move effectively. Terror Knights are very strong. Their big drawback is that they're slow. Giving the class to a character who is naturally fast offsets one of its biggest weaknesses and lets you play more into its strengths. So, for a build like this, it's a pretty classic Terror Knight build, honestly. A big two-handed weapon is a classic. You can do axes, hammers, swords, whatever you would like. The best defensive armor that you can bring to the table, whatever it would happen to be. I've got some endgame stuff here, but it can be whatever. And you could go with a couple of different things here. I like to go with an earring specifically because it will boost our damage a little bit, and it does still give... Oh, here we go. It does still give good defenses against everything, which when you're on the front line is going to be pretty good. But you could also go with just a ring or something like that if you didn't have the resources to make a swordsman's earring or whatever, what have you. You could really do whatever you want with it. You just want the defenses. Items are going to be largely the same. You don't really need a lot of variation when it comes to Terror Knight. Spells, you would want the classic Instill Shadow to increase the damage output of your attacks while also increasing your resistance to dark magic. Drain Heart for emergency healing and a decent enough ranged damage option for when you need it. And then you can always have a status move in here. Terror Knights aren't the best with them. They have a little bit of an issue with accuracy, but every once in a while, you might be able to hit a group of enemies and actually land a couple bits of paralysis, so not bad. Then, of course, you're going to have your weapon skill of choice. I have here swords that are two-handed. And then Fearful Impact, Lament of the Dead, and Rampart Aura. These three are the bread and butter of Terror Knights. Targeted Fear, reducing damage, reducing defenses, always good. AoE Fear, same deal, but just randomly procs and could hit a whole bunch of enemies. And Rampart Aura to keep the enemy from just moving past this frontline tank. So Jeunan, good choice for this. If you're on other routes, you have better options like, say, Folkert, but still not a bad option. Not a bad option. Again, I mean, if you compare, definitely faster. So not bad at all. Moving on to Ravness, we have easily one of the best characters in the game, and she better be, with how much of a pain it can be to get her. Ravness is the second fastest character in the game, tied in second with Hobrim. She joins in her base Valkyrie class, and much like the Ravness sisters, you could keep her there for the whole game if you wanted to. Valkyrie has been much discussed as one of the best classes in the game with its powerful and numerous finishers, access to summon magic and boon of swiftness, and MP reduction, making it a true powerhouse. That said, there's plenty of other characters who can make good use of Valkyries. The Ravness sisters, for one. Ravness has something else going for her, and really, it's the only class I can recommend for her in good faith. White Knight. White Knight is one of the closest things to broken we can see in the game, and as such, it makes sense that there are only 4 characters in the game who can use it. Gildas, Mirrodin, Ravness, and one of the spoilery law route recruits who we're not going to talk about just yet. Given how powerful the class is, you really want to use as many characters in it as you possibly can, though I will say that that last spoilery character has their own class that's worth using, so shrug, I guess. If you're going through the game for the first time, you won't be able to change Ravness right away, as you need to get Gildas or Mirrodin first to get the marks to class change. However, whether you're able to make the change right away, or you have to wait for now, you will eventually get there. So I want to go over my build. We can see here with Ravness, again, I've already cleared the game, I've done a bunch of endgame stuff, I can reach level 50. If you're going through the law route for the first time, not going to be feasible for you, but that's fine. This gives you an idea of what to work towards with her. So, I choose to keep Ravness in lances. I do this because my 2 other White Knights, Gildas and Mirrodin, use different weapon types. Gildas is a 2-handed damage dealer, Mirrodin is a sword and board tank. So I wanted to have some variety there with Ravness, have her be able to attack at a different sort of range and angle than the other 2 might be able to. And I mean, she's a spear wielder, let's be honest. You look at her art, she uses spears. So what I have on her is the Holy Lance, and what's nice about this is it actually synergizes quite well with the rest of the class. So looking at the Holy Lance, you can see it does piercing damage and divine damage and bonus damage against Umbral, mainly undead. Very nice. It afflicts light averse, it has counterattack 3, and overall, it's a very nice weapon. It does kind of suck that it's stuck at the 2-3 range that all the late game lances use, as it means the counterattack can be a little bit hard to pull off, but it's still quite good. We do, of course, have Ravness in Divine because of her synergies with Divine Magic. As a, White Knight, she can use healing magic. And then I also, I forgot to actually switch this, I have a full Wormslaying set on Ravness. So, we have the Wormscale Helm, Wormscale Armor, and Wormscale Sleeves. This will give her the ability to do some dragon slaying. Very nice. And again, seeing how she's able to hit 2-3 range, she can actually potentially hit 2 dragons at a time with this and deal a lot of damage, which is part of the reason I like to have it on her. The Wormslaying set also just is a nice set in terms of the stats it gives. It gives good offensive stats, good defensive stats. It's good stuff all around. I then have Cloud Shoes on her so that she can more easily navigate around terrain. She won't get killed from getting knocked off of bottomless pits in the Palace of the Dead. Very good stuff. and then a Spearman's Earring for that nice boost to damage and defense. As far as items are concerned, we have the classic Mending Seed +1, generally just making it so she can throw out some spot healing if you don't have the MP, but it's not going to cost her a ton of mana. For items, we have the classic spread, a Mending Seed +1, pretty standard fare for all of my characters, low RT cost for good healing, useful for spot healing if you don't want to burn the MP on a spell. We have a Fruit of the Adept +1, giving a nice 25% restoration to mana and HP. You can use this on Ravness if you want to be able to get to a finisher faster, or if you need some healing spells. You can toss it on one of your mages if they need some health and some mana, all sorts of good stuff. A Blessing Stone, as we discussed with Jeunan, everyone should really have a Blessing Stone for emergency resurrections. And then I actually want to have this Array and Plume as well. This White Knight build is a bit more of an offense-oriented build. You know, we have things like Dragon Slayer, so being able to boost Ravness's damage is going to be very nice. Contrast with someone like Mirrodin, who's a purely defensive unit, we would want to have some more defensive items on him. So, good stuff all around in terms of our items. For spells, you're pretty limited in what you can do with White Knight. They have the basic healing spells, and they can cast Awaken. And I mean, that's about it. That's about all I got going for them. So I have the full range of heals, so that way we can heal no matter how much MP we have. And then, I mean, every once in a while, maybe you'll need to remove Sleep or Charm. Not really gonna happen much, if at all. But, I mean, it's there for when we need it. So, hey. In terms of skills, we of course have our weapon skill in Spears. Then we have Paralysis Blade, something that I don't typically use on my other White Knights. But again, having an auto skill that can put paralysis on your weapon, and then having a weapon that can hit 2 spaces at once, very solid. Being able to apply stunned to 2 enemies at the same time, quite nice. Then, of course, we have the classic Velocity Shift. This is the main thing to know about this build. And then Dragon Slayer, which we've already discussed. Now, why is Velocity Shift the main thing about this build? Well, to answer that, we need to talk about the fact that Ravness, again, is one of the fastest characters in the game. So you can see, even with this big 2-handed lance, all this heavy armor and everything, she's still under that fabled 100 RT. If you compare to Gildus, well, he needs to have his armor back. He's at 102, and Mirrodin is at 108. Definitely slower, the both of them. Fast, but not as fast. Ravness, being able to take more turns more regularly, is going to be able to proc Velocity Shift more turns and more regularly, which means she's essentially giving her RT to the rest of your team. In a way. Very, very nice. Very good stuff. Ravness is indisputably one of the best characters in the game. There's seriously basically no reason not to use Ravness in White Knight unless you just want to make another class hum with her stellar speed, which you could do. Don't get me wrong. You can absolutely do that. She's awesome, and thanks to Velocity Shift, again, her speed is everyone's speed. It's nice. And that, my friends, is pretty much all there is to say about Ravness and Jeunan. 2 very nice units, and some of the best recruits in Law, I would say. There's another one coming up who's quite nasty, but like these 2 are very, very good. That said, I am sorry that it took me so long to get to this one. Between the huge Palace of the Dead grind, as well as other stuff like Fire Emblem Engage having come out, there's been a lot going on that has distracted me from the Lawful Route run, and as such, the Lawful Route recruits. I mean, yeah, I hear you. It's just life, but still. I wish there was like 3 more of me to cover all this stuff at full efficiency for you guys. That said, I hope you found this useful, and if you have any interesting builds or additional comments to add, please do so. I love seeing y'all's thoughts. Plenty more content to come, so I hope you look forward to that. With all that said, my name is Tom, otherwise known as Titanium Legman. I hope you all have a good night. Stay safe and healthy out there. And remember, be good to each other. Bye now.